is no structural damage to Giannis Antetokounmpo's left knee after his awkward landing last night in Atlanta. Ligaments are sound, sources tell Zach Lowe, and me. Timetable to return unclear. Malika Andrews adding Giannis doubtful for Game 5 on Thursday. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Exciting match, and we've got a lot of news to get to. Stephen A. Max, how we doing, guys? Ready to go?
Hey. How y'all doing?
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good. Yes, for sure. I like this time. Let's get right into it. So, Stephen A., with Giannis doubtful, who is the most important player now in this series?
To me, it's Trae Young, and that's assuming he gets back in this series, which I anticipate he will do. He's going to be pivotal because, obviously, even without Giannis, if you got Middleton and the rest of the crew, they should be able to beat the Atlanta Hawks. What changes the game is Trae Young, and the fact that you don't have to contend with Giannis should make it even more pivotal for Trae Young to get back, because without Giannis, but with Trae Young on the court sparking this offense, he's averaging 32 points in this series on nearly 48% shooting. You get him back on the court with Giannis out, the Atlanta Hawks can take these guys. So I think that with him, it's one thing to do it without him in one game, but that's not something I see continuing as this series progresses. I think it's incredibly important that Trae Young gets back on the court, especially with Giannis hurt, so you can capitalize off of his absence.
Well, and that goes with you saying to start the series, Trae Young was the most important player. I took Giannis, but I'll tell you what, at this moment, not only would I take Middleton as more important for the Bucks even than Trae Young is for the Hawks, I take Drew Holiday as more important. Stephen A., look, Trae Young is very valuable. They won without him, not just because Lou Will was excellent, but because they were sharing the ball in his absence. But you know what, with the Bucks, Middleton plays out of his mind, they win. That goes for every game he plays out of his mind. The Bucks win. But that doesn't always happen. The reason Chris Middleton is not a perennial all-star is because he's not always great. He's sometimes great. He's usually good, sometimes great. So he's usually not an all-star, sometimes he is. He's usually not really able to be a crime partner for an MVP-type player, sometimes he is. And when he is, Stephen A., they win. And when he's not, they don't. But you know what? Now without Giannis, that really elevates Drew Holiday even more. Says, you know that about Middleton already. Drew Holiday, who can run the pick and roll, who can run an offense, an orchestrated offense, and hit big shots, he's got to step up too. My answer used to be Middleton. We knew that already. It's been Middleton. Been said Middleton. Now it's Drew Holiday who must step up for this team and becomes incredibly important for the Bucks.
Well, I'm certainly not proclaiming that Middleton and Drew Holiday's responsibilities and culpabilities don't elevate. Without Giannis, of course it does. I'm simply saying that one of them can give you something. And as the team is constructed, they can still beat the Atlanta Hawks. When I look at the Atlanta Hawks, regardless of what transpired in Game 4, to me it comes down to Trae Young getting back on the court and spearheading this offense. If he's able to do that, particularly creating shots with his teammates, and Lou Williams maintains his level of aggression, Bogdanovich didn't seem hampered by that knee injury in Game 4 as well. I think those kind of things propel them to win this series if Trae Young is on the court and Giannis is not. I think Milwaukee is a better team even without Giannis if those dudes do their job. With Trae Young, I'm saying if you're the Atlanta Hawks, I don't think you have a chance in this series. That's the only reason I name him as more pivotal, because they don't have a chance without Trae Young. Trae Young, to me, getting back on the court is their chance to win this series.
Well, look, injury has decided this whole playoff so far.
Yeah.
From LeBron and AD to KD and to Kyrie and James Harden and on and on. It seems like every series. I mean, even just think about this. No Trae Young, no Giannis. Guys are falling like flies. But the point was supposed to be that Giannis had a better crew. Giannis and Trae Young, the two best players. But you know who the best player after that is? Middleton. You know who the best player after that is? Drew Holiday. Stephen A., that hasn't always been the case. That's what I'm saying. It has not always been the case.
Hold on.
When it is the case, they win.
I'm confused. You're saying Drew Holiday and Middleton are the best players without Giannis compared to who? The rest of their teammates, or does that include Trae Young?
Off. I'm saying take Trae Young and take Giannis off their teams, right?
Okay.
The reason heading into this series, people like Milwaukee, is because when you looked at the third best player in the series after Giannis and Trae Young, that's Middleton. Who's the fourth best player? Drew Holiday. They haven't always been that. Lou Williams was last time out. They haven't always been. Cam Reddish is playing. Middleton's allowing himself to get shut down by Cam Reddish off an injury. After the way he dropped 38 the night before, they can't do that. They're inconsistent, Stephen A. They got to step up.
Yeah, they're consistent. They got to step up. But they ain't more important than the arrival of Trae Young. If Trae Young doesn't come back, they're not winning the series.
Yeah.
I think actually the Bucks still have chances. The Hawks still have chances based on what I just saw with Lou Will.
Yeah, Vegas and BPI both have the Bucks still winning the series. Guys, let's keep it moving, though. We have a Game 6 tonight right here on ESPN, a finals berth on the line. The Suns missing a huge opportunity to close out the series. Game 5 Monday in Phoenix. They get another shot to punch their ticket to the finals tonight in L.A. Speaking of L.A., we know the Clippers not scared with their back against the wall, being down 0-2 in their last 2 series. They'll look to push it to a Game 7 back in Phoenix without their best player, Kawhi Leonard. Zubac, questionable. Max, who has the most on the line tonight?
Oh, by far, Chris Paul. By far. I'll leave Paul George or whoever else to you, Stephen A. I think some guys can add to their legacy, right? Some guys can improve. Some guys, but who has not only the most to gain, but also the most to lose? It's Chris Paul. Stephen A., you had him right there. You had him on Stephen A.'s list, right? Top 5 all-time point guard if he wins the chip this year, but he's got to win the championship to be top 5, and maybe with a bullet. Maybe, in the top 5 and heading in the right direction, going up that list. But if he loses, Stephen A. Smith, if this dude how many teams can he be on that collapse in the playoffs? As much as we talk about point guard and how Chris Paul is the perfect point guard, maybe we're talking about the previous era, where he could play at a slower pace and monopolize the ball and do all the things that we grew up thinking a point guard should do. But maybe the game has changed because campaigns in the game, they're playing at a faster pace. They did better. Stephen A., think about this. This team built the lead without Chris Paul. Now he comes back and they could collapse again? Can you imagine if this series goes to a Game 7? What's on the line for Chris Paul? He has the most to gain, historically right now, everything, and the most to lose if his team collapses. The answer is Chris Paul.
Well, listen, I don't blame you for that synopsis because I get where you're coming from, particularly when you're feeding off of what we witnessed in Game 5. In Game 5, you have to get DeAndre Ayton the ball. You can't have DeAndre Ayton on the floor for 36 minutes and have him take less shots in 26 extra minutes of play than DeMarcus Cousins received. DeMarcus Cousins took 12 shots in 11 minutes. DeAndre Ayton took 9 shots in 36 minutes. That's on Chris Paul. You got to get DeAndre Ayton involved. I get that. But I would still tell you Paul George. And the reason why I tell you Paul George is because Paul George has been taking some heat. And Paul George, because of what transpired in Game 7 last year, what transpired in Game 2 when he missed those 2 free throws with 8.2 seconds left at the line and he missed both of them. And when you look at that and then you juxtapose that to his performance in Game 5, where he dropped 41 and hit 15 of 20 shots after shooting 5 of 20 the game before, and you see the way that he performs, now you've got an opportunity to push this to a Game 7. And if you wet the bed and don't show up tonight and play small, and the Phoenix Suns advance to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1993, and Chris Paul is in his first NBA Finals, ever, and you're Paul George, and you don't close the deal, and you don't push this to a Game 7. There's a lot of heat that he's going to take too, because here's the reality from a philosophical perspective, Max. Here's where you and I religiously disagree. Chris Paul is one of the great point guards to have ever played this game. But when you are a relatively miniature guard, they don't look at you and say, you take us to the promised land. The exception would have been in Isaiah Thomas when you had Joe Dumars, Vinny the Microwave Johnson coming off the bench,
deep team.
the bad boys and stuff like that. But Allen Iverson, everybody looked at him and said, even though he was the answer, he's the 6-foot guard out of Georgetown. There's but so much he's going to do. You look at other guards throughout history that have been relatively small. You look at the great Kevin Johnson that played with Barkley in Phoenix when they went to the finals and was a scoring machine. In the end, when you're relatively miniature in size as a guard, you're not held to the level of accountability a 6'7", 6'8" dude like Paul George is held to.
I'll factor that into the consideration. I think that's right, that it's harder for the shorter players. That's true. But how many times can you collapse in the playoffs? And how many excuses can you make? Well, that's a Doc Rivers thing. That was on a Doc Rivers team. Well, he got hurt this year. But this year, Stephen A., everyone else is hurt. You'd be right if they were playing worse without him and then better with him. They were playing better with his backup, worse with him, and it's because the tempo slows down. He monopolizes the ball. It's because he wasn't getting the ball to Ayton Wright. But not only that, Stephen A., Kawhi is not playing for the other team. He is in a season right now. He's in a season right now where the other superstars are all hurt. You know the one team that's all together? The Suns. So when you bring up the valid point, look, this dude's 6 feet tall. This is a game of giants. But he's got Booker, and he's got Payne, and he's got Johnson, Cam Johnson, and everybody, Bridges, and Ayton, and everybody.
Pause. There's some facts that need to be brought out before you continue with that point. Number one, Chris Paul was playing sensational before COVID protocols took him out of games 1 and 2.
Facts, as the kids say.
Game 2, after Cameron Payne played lights out in those 37 minutes without a single turnover, 29 points and 9 assists, he gets hurt 4 minutes into game 3. When he got hurt, Devin Booker got his nose broke, had to wear the mask, and struggled miserably over a stretch of